you. Thank you so much. One thing I really have to ask is when you had the interaction with international institutions, World Health Organization, and African Development Bank.
Yeah.
What are the lessons you've learned from this interaction? What are the big takeaways you'd like to share? And how yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you off. Yeah. My interaction when I worked with WHO, it was even in Nigeria. I worked with them as a visiting intern. And it wasn't even, of course, I worked in the unit I worked in with WHO back then. That was back in 2013-ish. When I traveled from the US, I was doing my master's program. So I went on for summer that year. I'd, of course, been communicating with the country representative of WHO in Nigeria. I wanted to go back home. I like to travel home at least once a year to go give back. And that's why I don't like people who just bash their country and say, oh, that country can never be good again and blah, blah, blah. Take your bags and jet off. I'm a little bit reserved as to when they say that because you never can tell. You can still help the nation. Of course, you might be living in another advanced economy or country, but it doesn't mean that you still cannot give back to your home country. So I used to travel home. So I went back home to work at the WHO back then. Even when I entered the gate, oh God, how did you get here? They don't just admit people to come and work in this industry. You must know the president or you must know one minister that brought you. I said, I don't know anybody, and I just email me, I send them. And so I was posted to the they call it MNCH, maternal newborn and child care health or something. So that's the department that deals with women and children basically. That's where you have the OBGYN work too, and anything related with reproductive medicine. The WHO is pretty much like a big, I used to see them as a big Ministry of Health back then, but just with international affiliations. So I worked with them for like a couple of, maybe 2 or 3 months back then. So even while I was there, I did a project that the WR, the country representative, funded. They actually earmarked funds for me to go to that study. I went to UCH in Ibadan, and I went to OATHC, your university's teaching hospital, to go gather some studies. I was trying to see the knowledge and perception of pregnant mothers on available technologies to mitigate things like sickle cell. So we're trying to see what's their knowledge about bone marrow transplant, prenatal testing, right, for those at-risk groups like that. So it was a very enlightening phase. At least it entered my CV that I also work with the WHO. Of course, we maintain some networks and communication still with them. Even up until now, I still have friends in WHO that I can easily call and work with. Right. So that was that about that. Nothing serious about IVF, was just public health, studies or engagement in maternal and child health scenarios. Then my stint with the World African Development Bank, that wasn't even with IVF as well, because I still do my clinical microbiology studies as well. So we were involved in public health, infectious disease research. That was during Ebola, and even more as recently as during COVID. So we're trying to introduce new technologies that could help us diagnose Ebola faster and COVID faster. We're out trying to help introduce this LAMP technology, a little bit different from PCR. You don't need to buy that expensive PCR machine. You can even just do your DNA amplification in a water bath or a heating block. One step temperature, and you can have amplified targets that you can easily use to diagnose a particular disease. So we work with a resident institution back then. It's called the African Center of Excellence for Genomics of Infectious Diseases. Dr. Happy, Professor Happy at Redeemers University. and they got like an $80 million grant from the World Bank to establish a fine institution. And they're doing great now. I mean, so most of the infectious disease projects I work on, I actually used to work with them at that institution. They have all the equipment, all the sequencers. I mean, the sequencers that even some universities don't have in the US, they have it at that Redeemers Universities Institute, and we did some couple of studies, but the thing is, we do find at the level of validating those technologies, but when it gets to the stage of we actually introducing it to the government, that's when the wala starts. So because it never gets to see the light of the day. I mean, we even got to a stage where we tried to work with the Federal Ministry of Health. I mean, the guy that was back then, they put a proposal inside the national budget. They got money for it, but the new guy just used it for something else. Not that they embezzled it, but they converted to some other project, which was not originally what we went for. So at the point we now wrote down proposal ourselves, we didn't work with them. We got funding directly from the African Development Bank. From one publication I made, they found me and contacted me. Oh, we can support your research. So we submitted a proposal. I think they gave us $150,000 just to do some public health studies on bats. That we could try to find some therapeutic genetic materials that could help silence the expression of Ebola and some other infectious genes and things like that. But then we did some studies, but then there's still some follow-up studies that still needs to be done. I mean, of course, if $150,000 is not sufficient for such robust exercises or experiments or studies, so I mean that gets us in the way to get the conversation started. We're also able to work on COVID. We tried to design the COVID diagnostic test for Nigeria. We worked with NCDC. They tested some of the testing kits we tried to develop back then. But then when it got to the stage of implementation, we were working with the WHO back then too. I mean, up until stage, they were going to do, I think, NYSC during that COVID pandemic that we should roll out that testing kit as an alternative to PCR kits that they were using back then, or those rapid kits, just to see how they compare. But then we never just got to see the light of the day. But at least
Wow.
some of those efforts are rewarded. At least we try to feel good by something. At least we're trying to do something for our country. Although we might not get the voice or we might not get the final right support we need, but at least we are doing our best. Maybe sometime in the future they recognize our past records and say, okay, maybe you guys can do this for us this time around. But we just keep pushing. But at least it makes us happy that at least we are doing our best. We are trying the best possible we can for our country, not just our country, for Africa as well. And if the United States recognize it, but that's part of what they considered when I was going to apply for my ASIN visa, my EB1 thing. Those are the things they recommend. Oh wow, for you to have done this kind of research in Nigeria, it was beneficial to the United States as well. And they approved it, even though it wasn't even like something we read out. We showed them all the publications that, oh, they said that it's a good, attempt, but it's not something that they will adopt. So that's good enough for us. You did something by American standards. So they still accepted it and say, wow, buzz out of you guys, you're doing great. And we think you also, um, do good for the United States, so which is why we are still here today. So I'm not saying that the Nigerian government does not, appreciate. Some people appreciate those kind of efforts that you put in. I mean, maybe the right leadership